you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
Probably not. But I do get tired of seeing the country ripped off.
Why would you not?
I just don't think I really have the inclination to do it. I love what I'm doing. I really like it.
Also, it doesn't pay as well.
No, it doesn't. But, you know, I just probably wouldn't do it, Oprah. I probably wouldn't, but I do get tired of seeing what's happening with this country. And if it got so bad, I would never want to rule it out totally, because I really am tired of seeing what's happening with this country, how we're really making other people live like kings, and we're not.
Mr. Trump, you've done great things in your life, and I just wonder, how do I, as an average person, begin?
Well, first of all, never think of yourself as average. You started off with the wrong question, because you're not average. You've got a lot going. I see you're smart. I see you're very beautiful. And you're right against Erin. Look how beautiful she is. But, you know, I don't see any different. You have to tell yourself that you just have to get that word average out of your vocabulary. And you have to tell yourself that you're great. And you have to believe it. If you can say it and don't believe it, it doesn't matter. So just go out there and work hard.
You've said, though, that if you did run for president, you believe you'd win.
Well, I don't know. I think I'd win. I tell you what, I wouldn't go in to lose. I've never gone into losing my life. And if I did decide to do it, I think I'd be inclined. I would say that I would have a hell of a chance of winning, because I think people, I don't know how your audience feels, but I think people are tired of seeing the United States ripped off. And I can't promise you everything, but I can tell you one thing. This country would make one hell of a lot of money from those people that for 25 years have taken advantage. It wouldn't be the way it's been, believe me.
Thanks to you, we'll have a president of the United States who will make appointments to the highest states. Thanks to you.
People will be in charge. Your voice, your desires, your hopes, your aspirations. Your desires, your hopes, your aspirations will never again fall. But for the first time in a long time, what we do know is that the pages will be authored by each and every one of you. You, the incredible American people, will be in charge. Your voice, your desires, your hopes, your aspirations will never again fall on deaf ears. The forgotten men and women, by the way, they're not so forgotten anymore, are they? There is nothing we cannot do. No task is too great, no dream too large, no goal beyond our reach. My message tonight is for all Americans, from all parties, all beliefs, all races, all walks of life. Whether you are African American, Hispanic American, Asian American, we are all Americans, and we are all united by one shared destiny. So I'm asking everyone to join this incredible movement. I'm asking you to dream big again, dream big and bold and daring. For your families, for yourself, for your country, big and bold and daring. I'm asking you to believe in yourself, and I'm asking you to believe once again in America. Your voice, your hopes, and your dreams will define our American destiny. And your courage and goodness and love will forever guide us along the way. Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That's how a real president sound. And welcome to Brother Ill Global. We are live, breaking live. Tons upon tons of intelligence has hit the market. It has been a crazy January 20th to February 11th. It has been transforming. That's what it has been. It has been an exclusive transition period or cycle with the new administration. A lot of things is just, I mean, it's just coming out from everywhere. It's just, we got the JFK stuff. We got the 3 judges attacking the Trump administration orders. It's executive orders. We got the coalition of Democratic attorney generals from or throughout the several states that have united to fight these executive orders. So this is an exclusive executive branch showdown throughout the several states and the versus the federal government, the executive branch, the federal government. And you got a Congress. It's going to be interesting because it's going to go down. It's going down. And you got the tariff wars, and you got a promise. You got a mandate from the American people, and you got a promise from an American president representing the constitutional republic. And the mission is to redeem our constitutional republics, to redeem the constitutional form of government and put it in policy, in practice, in legislation, put it into the anti-American, anti-constitutional rhetoric, practices, policies, and fake, void, ab initio legislation that has done nothing other than cause irreparable injury to we the people of this constitutional republic, the United States of America. And so we got that. We got tariffs. We got the end of the policy and practice of subverting the American wealth to the planet. You know, foreign adversaries, hostile nations, a gazillion NGOs, which are really money laundering vessels, to steal from the American people our wealth and to make our enemies wealthy, including our allies. A great sellout. That's what it should be called. Operation Great Sellout. Right? It's to put an end to the great selling out of our country. And so it's been a lot because as these individuals continue to reveal who they are in the shadow government or the deep state or the bureaucratic administrative state that's been sucking dry in this parasitic infrastructure that has been put in place of the republic. And it has replaced the republic up until the first Trump administration as the 45th, and now as the 47th. We had a brief interruption back in 2020, and those things are being rectified as we speak, which I've been saying that forever. I said, hey, wait a minute. How can we just, start moving on, start legitimizing what took place in 2020 by even referring to it as a Biden administration or Biden-Harris administration? We got to look at it as a Biden-Harris regime. And that's why they were so comfortable at policies that were anti-constitutional, anti-American, anti-we the people. And now this is being uncovered. There's trillions of dollars that's been going out of our treasury into somebody else's treasury. And it's been going on for decades. It's been going on through all of the different presidencies, all the way back to Bush's to now, maybe even further back, maybe even back, right? Maybe even back to the 1800s. The great sellout happened.
Smart individual, not very smart.
We know the great sellout also took place in February 21st, 1871, with the incorporation of the District of Columbia and putting a foreign tax against the American people. Again, Trump brings this history to the forefront. Now, I know we're not, just for the record, a disclaimer, just for the record, this is for educational purposes. This is for American purposes and sharing intelligence right here on the WIC network and right here on X. But President Trump, he continues to bring this information out, and we continue to see all of the moving parts coming together. And it was already coming together when I seen Elon go and absorb Twitter and then do the rebranding and also the restructuring, the reorganize, basically bankrupt what we refer to as Twitter, now known as X, because Twitter was involved in unconstitutional activity, illegal activity in collusion with the federal government, and they were censoring American speech, which was a violation of their inherent rights protected under the First Amendment, which is a violation of the bond pending against the federal government, which creates an insurance claim against. So that's where everybody starts suing these people for damages and injury, for the deplatforming, the demonetizing, etc., and the sanctions on American speech by its own supposed to be government. But the issue is it's not a government, it's a corporation acting, pretending as a government under United States laws, Federal Code 18 USC 3000 something. You got to go in there and check it out. Google it. Look up the definition of the United States and the definition that it refers to itself as. So it kind of speaks to the behavior of the entity and the representatives representing the institutions. And so that's why you see a lot of politicians would declare their allegiance to protecting the institution and not the people. So again, you got a lot of information that's out on the scene right now as President Trump pushes the agenda, the will of the people, the restoration of the birthrights of the American people, the sovereignty, which is the main issue here. It's about the sovereignty. It's about, like he said in the opening clip, when he talked about, you will be in charge. We're already in charge. Who in the hell lost their conscious mind? Or in this case, who in the hell lost their constitutional mind? Right? Like you taking off to defend, to support, to protect, to enforce the laws of the Constitution, the American Constitution for the United States, that was issued in 1787 and ratified in 1789, which established lawfully, internationally, the United States of America, constitutional republic. Okay. And the first nation, the Moroccan Empire, the Moors, right, within the framework of the United States and as an ally to the United States, established and recognized the relations, the independence of the United States in a constitutional republic. You go to George Washington, he confirms and verifies this. You go to the treaties. And you can go to the nationalarchives.gov. That's your reference points, so we can understand the political movements, right, which shape the personality and establish the United States, the constitutional republic here at North America. And so we've been far away from the constitutional flow of government. And we've been under the policies and practice of an administrative state, which was set up through Congress. And that's what the overreach is about. How does Congress sitting up here yelling and screaming about the USAID, for example? And if you listen, they start to tell you everything. They say, hey, we set this up. They're taking ownership of the corruption, right? So we know where the pain points is coming from. They say, we set this up. Congress controls the purse. So they acknowledge their obligations, which they're in violation of. See, 1 and 2 for the record, right? So they acknowledge they taking ownership of the corruption. 2, then they took acknowledgement that the burden, the obligation is with them. So the liability is with them. So the people know we've been injured economically and financially, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, from this type of reckless, negligent spending, which is really a fiduciary, a breach of fiduciary duty, right? And there's a willful breach, right, with the intent to cause harm. You know what I'm saying? So all of this they're saying to you when you listen to them, they say, hey, we control the purse. And so now we start to understand what overreach is. So you set up an agency to operate in the executive branch independent of the president who's in charge of the executive branch. So Congress is now in the executive branch, but you're in the legislative branch. How is this a reality? And so where Congress, and even in some cases, they talk about these agencies might not even have congressional oversight. Well, who delegated such power? So they take the authority or the power that we delegate to the elected officials, that make up the representative government. So they represent the will of the people. They take that and use the power to create these instruments of subversion. So where they're subverting the will and converting over the people's rights into privileges, taxing the people through all of these different regulations, via regulators and then agencies, and then now it's a monopoly. And what happens is trillions of dollars is being ciphered through this feudal law, administrative, bureaucratic state that's really taking the country into a decline, to a rapid decline. But with the great marketing scam, right, that's been levied against the people, because now we know that all of the media outlets, newspapers are bought and paid for by government, right, through agencies to suppress the intelligence, to suppress it, and then misconstrue it and use it to control the public perception, right? So that's a psychological attack against the people, willfully, right, causing irreparable injury, because people would have made different decisions, life decisions, if they was not under attack via propaganda, which we know that it was reported that the Obama administration enacted, or via executive order, the use of propaganda against the American people. Allegedly, it was reported that, though. And so, but we know for a fact that there's been propaganda, because Trump has been suing and winning. They just released, for example, the 60 Minutes with former Kamala Harris on 60 Minutes. They released the edited clip and the original clip, so you can see the manipulation. You had the FBI, you had the Facebook files, you had the Twitter files, you had the Russia hoax, you had the investigations and the findings from these particular investigations. As we follow the storyline from from the Obama administration to now, and so we say, well, wait a minute. So we know that people would have made different decisions, life decisions, financial decisions, business decisions, family decisions, health decisions, etc. But unfortunately, they were the victims of propaganda through the media, right? And so now the media got to be held to account, because now we found, instead of it being an allegation, or it being a conspiracy theory, or it being something that we're talking about in the backyard, no, there's a paper trail that the media was the recipients of grants via the USAID and other agencies. It was a court case. The court issued reports from its investigations and found that the federal government under the Biden and Harris regime were in violations 100 times over. The FBI, they tell everybody was in violations for for the attack through the censorship against the American public, and all of this collective maintained data indicates that the people have been victimized over the last 4 years, and then we can go back into other administrations where we can see the victim. Not only we got the results of the injury, right, but we also got the premeditated thoughts, activity, movements, the actors, the systems, the infrastructure, the connectivity, right, and profits behind it all. And so it all makes sense for the American people in this, and not just the American people. This is actually the entire world is actually paying attention. I just seen some reports over the past couple of days Russia accusing, it's been reported or alleged that Russia is accusing the Biden-Harris regime of attempting to, assassinate them. Trump, Viktor Orban, and Vladimir Putin. I've seen some other reports that's been all over the social media the last couple of days in regards to Shapiro, the governor, and the Biden-Harris regime were involved in the attempted assassination of President Trump. So I've seen these are allegations, but again, and it's been some documentation provided, and filings provided, and everybody's aware. And so again, the American people and the world is aware, and then we looked at everything. We looked at the sanctions, and then we looked at how the sanctions backfired. We looked at the initiations of these special, whether it's a special military operation or it's a response to the October 7th, or it was the October 7th event, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, whether it's the Syrian situation with the overthrow of the Assad regime, whether it's the eternal conflicts of NATO, the eternal conflicts of the UN, whether it's ICC warrants against Bibi Netanyahu, or today's issues, whether it's Greenland or the data around all of that. When you can see the pattern, the connected, and going all the way back to the pandemic, the Wuhan lab, then all of that information that follows, right? And it's like, well, so it's back to what Trump was saying to us in the beginning. He said, well, hey, man, I think this stuff started in it's a lab leak. And they was talking about, no, it was on a wet market, etc. And so every step of the way, Trump has been signaling to the American people and the world that these things were correlated. These things were not by accident. And he was pitching out, giving the American people clues that he had objective data, but he was under attack. His presidency was under attack, even from the people that he was appointing. They were connected to the deep state. They were planted inside of the administration, and then planted more plants inside of the agencies. You know what I'm saying? Then you had plants inside of both supposed to be political parties. And so this was an onslaught. And when they couldn't, for me, it was the Ukraine. It was the Ukraine when he got on the phone with the Ukrainian president Zelensky. And he brought up that corruption. And then we seen this massive onslaught, right? And it was crazy because it's significant, because then we seen the pandemic come down, boom, after they lost right there, the pandemic came down, And it was all timely, right? Because we know under the guise of the pandemic, they was able to basically null and void constitution. It was able to spin the Constitution, overthrow the legislative branches all over the country. And it was a full lockdown bio administrative state, and Fauci had rulership, and it just totally undermined our economy. It really crippled the economy. It caused everything to go into a spin. Inflation went rapid. I know we always dealt with inflation, but we went through a super hyperinflation. The pandemic regulations and their policies and practice that was birthed from that pre-planned was it caused irreparable harm to our country and to the world. And so, but when we continue to pay attention to these events, we kind of find out, well, they received millions and millions of dollars through USAID. They received grants and this, that, and this, and they created it from these funds, from U.S. taxpayer dollars. They created it. They're involved in it. They got a patent on it. Yeah, what do you mean? They got a patent on this thing. And so, President Trump, man, is like, he talked about he was tired of seeing. He said he know people are tired of seeing the U.S. being ripped off. Like now, some odd years later, you can see, this guy was serious about his approach, and his personality was all intact, 20, 30 years ago. So, when you say, all you got in this world is your word, your word is your bond, he pushing that promises made, promises kept, you gotta kind of like appreciate that part of him, like, right? You gotta appreciate that. Like, dude was serious. He's been seeing this thing from a totally different capacity, as an entrepreneur, as a donor to the political parties. You get real political when you're a successful business person, because you have to deal with power. You have to deal with the ruling class. And it has everything to do with, the continued success of your operations. You got to pull permits, you got to pay taxes, you got to employ people. That's, you got to deal with income taxes and that type of stuff. It's a lot that goes on. You got to follow these regulations, that regulations, and these regulations. So he's familiar with all of that stuff from his experiences in the business world. You got to be, though. You have to be. I've been an entrepreneur for 23 years, and you have to be, if you're serious about next level in your business operation. I mean, where do you think all of these fees and additional taxes is coming in at? Where you think all these regulations, which is a form of a tax, you got to pull a permit for this, you got to do that, you got to do this, but it's really a tax generating revenue program that they're subjecting you to, so they can continue to get rich off the backs of hardworking Americans. And so Trump has done a marvelous job at shaking up the administrative branch, because he is the president. We expect by law, by constitutional law, that the president is the controller of the executive branch. The judiciary has no business issuing administrative rulings over the administrative authority, which is the president of the United States. What are they doing? What they're doing is revealing themselves to the American public, and they're paying their dues to their political parties to maintain power. It's about the maintenance of power. And so, well, look at the correlation. Look at the connectivity of the three judges being Obama appointee judges. Isn't that interesting? So you gotta say this. Wait a minute, man. That's interesting. No, they've been activated. They've been tapped. Hey, you up? you up, and you up. You know, that's the point of us filing the paperwork. That's an activation. Hey, man, you up, bro? And I know they got a system where they, you know, the administrators, you know, send it out to a judge on a random type system, allegedly. But again, that you look into who the court administrators are, who the case managers are, the directors of these particular functions, and then you look at their, you know, are they Democrats? You know, you start because you got to look for the connectivity. You got to look for because if we exposing crime and corruption, and we talking about Trump being the law, the chief and executive of the law, and so, you know, what are these, you know, what is this about somebody interfering with the executive branch? And that's what the constitutional crisis is about. There's been an overreach from the other branches, as we can see. The legislative branch is in overreach, and the judicial branch is in the overreach in violation of the separation of powers. And so the separation of powers doctrine and what they call the co-equal, they were talking about co-equal something. But again, this is the restoration of our constitutional republic. And so by law, by constitutional law, they're in violation of law. So I'm interested in understanding or learning what is going to be. Oh, I think the Trump them already responded. They filed basically the same thing I said, just in illegal jargon. And so let's see what we got here. Make sure you go there and follow. Oh yeah. So I thought this was interesting. From 1619 to 1865, the U.S. benefited from over 222 million hours of unpaid, dehumanizing forced labor by enslaved blank people per scholars. Really should be Moorish people per scholars. The labor, primarily the production of tobacco, rice, sugar, and cotton, will be valued at over 97 trillion today, built off the backs. Now, I like this post. I just don't like when they try to say black and try to make it retroactive. The people were Moors or Asiatics, and black means pale or to bleach according to etymology. So we're not going to support the propaganda, basically propaganda, but we will maintain the rest of this article. So, and this is from Corey Bush. He said from 1619 to 1865, the U.S. benefited. So that's an important number. It's 222 million hours of unpaid. So that's, you know, forced labor. That's violation of somebody's civil rights. Then you bring that over here to today's, and you look at the products, say with tobacco, rice, sugar, and cotton. These are industries. So you look at that, that's valued up over $97 trillion built on. So I like that because, you know, when the discussion of restitution and going into the courts of equity, I like that number because you got to look at that. That is, you know, I like that $97 trillion that we could participate in. That's a lot of money. I think all the gold they said together was at 19 trillion. So you're saying 97 trillion today? That means that nobody can pay us. You know, when I say us, I'm referring to the prisoners of war, the free Moors who were held captive in violation of the Constitution and its attachments and a breach of the treaty agreement. That's a breach of trust. So that was in violation of the private and the public trust, and in violation of the civil law. So if you know, I like that. Again, you got to have your numbers together. I like having the numbers together so we can see the numbers, so we can know exactly how much is on the table. So you're saying that we know 97 trillion today? That's enough to be in the street marching. So in that regard, I missed this part because I really wasn't watching it. So, I mean, what are your thoughts when it comes to the Kendrick Lamar performance? And if this the message that he was signaling, and this value that, you know, if this is the right numbers at $97 trillion, hey man, listen, I don't care if he was mumble rapping or, you know, whatever. I mean, this was probably the most important halftime performance in U.S. or world history, right? You got to think about that. You talk about 90, all the gold. I was watching something today, reading something. They said all the gold on the planet, I think, was 19 trillion. But all the gold on the planet was valued at 19 trillion. So you saying you owe us 90? When they say us, we refer to the Moors who were enslaved and forced into labor camps and was dehumanized under the color of law in violation of the Declaration of Independence, Articles of Association, Articles of Confederation, U.S. Constitution, the treaty between the Moors and the United States in 1787. So with that being said, right, you saying that injury that caused irreparable harm and the damages is valued at $97 trillion? No, listen, I should have watched the halftime show because this was, I didn't know it was a $97 trillion halftime show message. That's like saying, hey, you ever seen those 1-800 numbers? This is a class action suit, or got one of those emails. You have been impacted. There's been a $1 billion settlement, and you can call this number and claim your money now. Well, this was one of those halftime shows. I didn't know that the halftime show was going to send a message out and say, look, man, this is about a class action suit that's valued at $97 trillion. This will immediately redistribute the wealth, generational wealth, for clearly generations. $97 trillion? Well, somebody got to talk about that a little bit more. We got to do some more verifying of these numbers. That's an interesting number. That's a very interesting number to me. $97 trillion? Well, heck, if you're talking about $97 trillion, I want to talk about slavery now. I want to talk about the enslavement operation that was carried on here at North America in violation of the Constitution. That's a legitimate conversation. Why? You talk about $97 trillion if these numbers come back. So somebody got to investigate these numbers, run the numbers, okay? Because we know money was 1 billion times more, right? And we suffering from hyperinflation since they stole the gold, right? In 33 and then in 71 again, they doubled down on it. But when they reopened the banks and called it a bank holiday, it should have been a holiday because the banks, the owners of the banks, they stole all the money. There was no gold or silver in the banks. And the U.S. federal government was de facto, by issuing executive orders under Roosevelt and Congress at that time, they participated in the looting of America's treasury. And so ain't nobody got no money. We operating under feudal law, dealing with fiat currency, paper security in lieu of money, right? It said right on there, Federal Reserve note. Can't be a dollar. According to etymology, dollar means silver coin, the silver gold coin. It's a Latin term. But so listen, for $97 trillion, I think we should be having a conversation about what took place and was it in fact in violation of constitutional law? Because we know for a fact there is no such nation as black on earth. So these people actually had a national descent, and in that national descent will identify their national origin, right? And so now we can understand what was our relationship, right? So I'm Moorish American descendant of Moroccans born in America. So we got a few relationships. I'm protected by the Constitution. All men are born free, right, and endowed with certain rights by their Creator. So any action contrary to that will be a divine law violation. 2, we got a treaty agreement. So it's a lot of, it's a lot of things around that can secure a claim for your recoupment or your restitution for violations. But, again, we got to have a conversation. Why? It's $97 trillion. What's my point? What's the point of having a conversation if all we're doing are regurgitating trauma, right? We got to rise above the trauma. How you do that? You look at it, you address it, you understand it, you talk about it, you break it down, you study it, and you move on, right? You don't be consumed by it, and so where it creates the constructivity in your mind, how you operating on a lower frequency, basically. And so, at $97 trillion, let's see, 97, 16, 6 plus 1 is 7. That's a good principle there. So, if we're talking about $97 trillion for damages, I mean, we got to talk about that. Why? Because the treaty and Constitution act as insurance policy. So if the government's involved in unconstitutional activities, that's against the law. That's a crime. That's just really how it works. Yeah. We set up an insurance policy. We the people. Number 1. 2, we got treaty agreements, Article 6. So it bonds everybody. So it bonds everybody under the Constitution as supreme law of the land, including the treaties and laws of the United States. Then it says all governors, not governors, but it says all everybody, senators, all judicial officers within the several states, the representatives, the senators, the executives, everybody, all are bound by oath of affirmation to support and defend this Constitution. Article 6. Everybody. So you cannot be in the government itself in its de jure capacity, not de facto capacity, meaning that it's operating purely on constitutional law and no other additional motive, plots, plans, agendas, etc. Constitutional law. That's it. Its only job is to defend the Constitution and all of its activities. Its activities is supposed to be constitutional. That's how you defend it. You don't do any action. You don't take any action contrary to the Constitution. It is not what the Constitution says in Article 6, a law from any state contrary to this Constitution is notwithstanding. So the judicial, going back to the 3 judges that attacked the executive orders with temporary restraining orders. Listen to this. Does Trump administration have any obligation to recognize it? Not if it's contrary to the Constitution. It's notwithstanding. That's what the Constitution says. So it's a void order. It's void ab initio on his face because these bad actors cannot act in access of its jurisdiction, or it cannot act in want of jurisdiction. It must have a warrant. It must be in compliance with Constitution. It cannot overstep its boundaries. It's bound by that, and vice versa. Trump can't overstand. The executive branch can't overstep their boundaries. Can't do that. The same thing for Congress. Congress makes the law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So breaking down the operations, the vital organs of the United States, the body, so we can all have a greater insight on not just what's going on, but able to take civic action, legal action. The citizens, because that's what really all this boils down to. If the citizens really support President Trump, the voters that really went out there and voted, they will continue to mobilize. It's bigger than just voting. You have to actually see what he's going through. You have to actually mobilize and enforce the law through the legal system, through the civic system, through the economic system, through the social system. And so you have to make your presence felt in all of these realities. So you come together and you start your neighborhood associations, you start your organization, citizens, the people coming together, filing your class action suits against these Democratic Union of Attorney Generals, for example. You let them know the people are here. You file complaints against these judges because we voted for President Trump. We voted for reform to the executive branch, where the president has absolute control in accordance with the Constitution of the executive branch. This ain't no, what do you mean? So that's what, to me, that's why it was important for him to win the popular vote, because the popular vote says, we the people voted for you. We the people, you're the president of the people, not the electoral college. We the people. It was important to win these battle states to make history, unprecedented history. So it can be clear when the president is taking his executive actions, presidential actions under the Constitution, that it will not be interfered with. You don't have the power of the people. The power of the people, we have spoken. We have spoken. And this is not a debate. Y'all want to scream U.S. democracy, but this is a constitutional republic under Article 4, Section 4. That's the law. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States. So for the flag of the United States to have any integrity, any value, right, for it to represent freedom, the constitutional law must be enforced. Because without it being enforced and it's being invaded, then we don't have a nation. We don't have a nation. The laws, if the rule of law is not the order of the day, you don't have a nation. You do not have a legitimate nation, and therefore our position on the world diminishes. Right? We become a third world country overnight. And then all of our systems are depleted. And that means America is defeated. And so in making America great again, it's the value of it, the heart, the soul, the spirit of it is the intelligence of the American citizenry. The heightened intelligence of the American citizenry and the return back to common sense constitutional law amongst the common folks. That's the issue. That's the real issue. That's the only issue, because in order for the people to recoup their authority and power and wealth and economy, right? We must be in the capacity, and put it like this. We cannot be in the minority capacity. When I mean minority, meaning an infant, not in a capacity to contract. You understand me? Meaning we're in an ignorant state. We're not exercising our God-given rights protected by the Constitution, the constitutional law, which each and every elected official, agency, contractor, and any part thereof is subject to that contract. That's a contract. So the people have automatic relief when they're acting in their right capacity. Failure to do so is a default. You failed to answer up to the constitutional standard by name and principle. You understand me? You allow some entity to tell you to regulate you, put a mask on, put a mandate for vaccine, or you can't work. No, you sue them. You sue them under the Constitution. You sue them. There is no immunity. There is no wiggle room when you violate the constitutional law willfully, intentionally, etc. No, you're supposed to serve them notice of damages. You hold them to account with your complaint via an affidavit, and you serve them, and you go and administrate the real administrative state, the authority of the people. The power is reserved to the people. The power is of the people, for the people, and by the people. We are the authority from which the power even exists. Power is lesser than authority. Authority is supreme. Authority delegates power. And we, the people, ordained this Constitution. We ordained it. And so, we created. How is it greater than its creator? We created it to serve, not for us to serve it. This creation, this Frankenstein, serves at the will and the pleasure of a free American people, we the people. And so in order for the American people to return, to recoup, to redeem their authority, their constitutional authority, then we have to reconstruct the constitutional mentality. We got to give you back the education that's required, the knowledge that's required, for that process to take place and be legitimate. And that's what the Trump administration has represented his entire time, was bringing that intelligence back to the forefront because of the fake news blackout. They had information wars going on. So you couldn't get the signal because there was an artificial inflammatory clouds created that was designed to distort the signal. And so, the entire time, Trump has been doing the rallies, has been doing press conferences, been doing news interviews, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He kept saying it. He kept inching out and putting out different intelligence, saying, hey, look, I'm just standing in their way. This is about the American people. This is about you and your authority and you being reconnected to your wealth. We got to get our people back wealthy again. What do you mean we're behind? And so that's where I'm at with that. We're going to move on. USAID reportedly bankroll Al-Qaeda terrorist college tuitions under record shows, Fox News. The FBI just discovered 2,400 documents tied to JFK assassination that were never provided. Okay.
Smart individual. We have people over there today who are making a deal that as we get money, we get minerals and we get oil and we get all sorts of things, because why are we doing this? And all this money, we're in for maybe 350 billion and Europe's in for 100 billion. And Europe's in really as a form of a loan. In theory, they get that money back. In theory, they get interest on their money. It's a whole different ballgame. And Biden is the one that started doing this. Every time Zelensky came here, he walked away with $60 to $100 billion. I think he's one of the greatest salesmen who have ever lived, by the way.
Can you discuss your intentions with the Kennedy Center, which you're now chair of?
So we took over the Kennedy Center. We didn't like what they were showing and various other things. And I had a lot of the board members already, as you know, and we have some that will be replaced. But we have, I guess, a whole new group of people going in. I have Rick Grinnell, who's got some experience in that world. He's very good. Going to be handling it on a temporary basis. I think he'll do a great job, but we're going to get some great professionals. I'm going to be chairman of it, and we're going to make sure that it's good and it's not going to be woke. There's no more woke in this country. This woke has cost us a fortune and cost us our reputation, but the reputation's coming back very, very rapidly. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. There is no tariff, zero. So if it's made in the United States, there is no tariff. All you have to tariff on steel and aluminum. So the failed American trade policies have led our once incredible United States steel and aluminum industries, once incredible, not now, but they're not bad. I saved them because of my first term, totally saved them. If I didn't do what I did, I put massive tariffs, not the highest level, but pretty massive tariffs. We took in a lot of money and we took in a lot of jobs, but we were being pummeled by both friend and foe alike. Our nation requires steel and aluminum to be made in America, not in foreign lands. We need to create, in order to protect our country's future, a resurgence of U.S. manufacturing and production, the likes of which has not been seen for many decades. It's time for our great industries to come back to America. I want them back to America. This is the first of many, and you know what I mean by that. We're going to be doing others on other subjects, topics. protecting our steel and aluminum industries is a must. And today I'm simplifying our tariffs on steel and aluminum so that everyone can understand exactly what it means. It's 25% without exceptions or exemptions. And that's all countries, no matter where it comes from, all countries. If made in the United States, however, United States of America, there is no tariff, zero. So if it's made in the United States, there is no tariff. All you have to do is make it in the United States. We don't need it from another country. As an example, topics. Protecting our steel and aluminum industries is a must. And today I'm simplifying our tariffs on steel and aluminum so that everyone can understand exactly what it means. It's 25% without exceptions or exemptions. And that's all countries, no matter where it comes from, all countries. If made in the United States, however, United States of America, there is no tariff, zero. So if it's made in the United States, there is no tariff. All you have to do is make it in the United States. We don't need it from another country. As an example, Canada, if we make it in the United States, we don't need it to be made in Canada. We'll have the jobs. That's why Canada should be our 51st state. We'll bring back industries and we'll bring back our jobs and we'll make America industry great again. So essentially, we're putting on a 25% tariff without exception on all aluminum and all steel, stronger than it ever was before. Okay. So are you finished with everything, I think?
We have aluminum still to sign.
Okay,
here,
let's
sir.
go.
So with respect to aluminum, similarly to steel, since 2018, a large number of exceptions and exemptions have been added into the law. This eliminates all of those and also increases the ad valorem tariff rate from 10 to 25%.
Mostly the last part is the most important, right? Would you say?
Totally.
So basically, this is aluminum, the same thing, no exceptions, no nothing. And it's going to bring our aluminum business back and may go higher. I mean, frankly, it may go higher. And we're going to also be talking about we're going to be talking about things over the next 3 weeks that I think will be amazing for our country, amazing for our jobs, and will bring us to a new level of prosperity. And I think, frankly, our allies and our enemies all over the world expected this. They really expected it for years. They really expected it sometime during the Biden administration, but they didn't do anything. As you know, I put tariffs on China. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars with those tariffs, and Biden wasn't able to get them out. He tried to, but it was too much money. He couldn't do it. And we're going to be doing a very concise and, very, it's going to be good. And I don't think if done properly, and we're going to try and do that, we don't want it to hurt other countries, but they've been taking advantage of us for years and years and years. And they've charged us tariffs. Most of them have charged us, almost everyone, I would say, almost without exception. They've charged us and we haven't charged them. And it's time to be reciprocal. So very, you'll be hearing that word a lot, reciprocal. If they charge us, we charge them. If they're at 25, we're at 25. If they're at 10, we're at 10. And if they're much higher than 25, that's what we are too. So that's having to do with everything. That's not just steel and aluminum, but we'll be discussing that over the next couple of weeks. But we will be looking at chips, and we will be looking at cars, and we're going to be looking at pharmaceuticals, and there'll be a couple of other things also in addition. That'll be
Mr. President,
yes.
Mr. President, U.S. steel workers have said that they support this move. What would you say to American consumers who are worried that prices
That they do support this move? I love the steel makers. That's good. Of course because they want to save their businesses. U.S. Steel will now be a very valuable company. Anybody that makes steel is going to be great. Anybody that works in big steel is going to be very happy.
What do you say to consumers who are worried about prices?
Oh, I don't think you're going to. No, you're going to ultimately have a price reduction because they're going to make their steel here. There's not going to be any tariff. These foreign companies will move to the United States, will make their steel and aluminum in the United States. Ultimately, it'll be cheaper, but we'll also have jobs, many, many more jobs.
So what are you looking at in terms of tariffs on cars and chips?
Well, we're looking at numbers, and we'll be coming up with a number, but we make some of the finest cars in the world, and some companies prohibit us from selling those cars in their countries, but they sell us cars. They send cars to us, and we don't do that. We charge nothing or 2.5%, and they'll be charging 100%. They'll be charging much more than that if you look at some of them. So I think those days are over, but we'll be announcing on other things such as cars. We got some other things we'll be doing, but the biggest thing is reciprocal. We want tariffs to be fair. If they charge us, we charge them.
Tomorrow, the reciprocal tariffs?
We'll be doing reciprocal over the next, I would say, 2 days, don't you think? 2 days, yeah, maybe.
Mr. President, the Australian Prime Minister has said that you are considering an exemption for Australia on steel. Is that correct? And why?
I just spoke to him, very fine man, and he has a surplus. I mean, we have a surplus with Australia, one of the few. And the reason is they buy a lot of airplanes. They are rather far away, and they need lots of airplanes. And we actually have a surplus. It's one of the only countries which we do. And I told him that that's something that we will give great consideration to.
And would you consider one for the UK as well?
Well, we have a huge deficit with the UK. Big difference.
You don't have a deficit with Argentina. Is that country also going to be?
We have a little deficit with Argentina. Almost with every country, but Australia, because of the airplanes, they buy a lot of airplanes. There's a little bit of a surplus.
Mr. President, if other countries retaliate,
I don't mind.
What is your plan for example, farmers? Last term,
Well, the farmers are going to be helped greatly. Yeah, the farmers are going to be helped greatly because they're not going to be dumping everything into our country. This would be a great bill for farmers. And in terms of retaliation, if they retaliate, it's, as I said, it's reciprocal. So if they raise it a little bit, then we raise it automatically. So I don't think it helps for them to retaliate. But also remember this, they can't really retaliate because we're the piggy bank. We're the piggy bank. But if we don't do this, we won't be the piggy bank for long. We won't be much of a country.
Mr. President, you see that report, sir, that Hamas was going to stop releasing Israeli hostages, and what was your reaction?
I think it's terrible. Look, I looked at the hostages that came in, and they're emaciated. It looked like something out of the 1930s. It's an absolute disgrace. And I think they saw the way the world viewed it, and they're looking for a reason not to send more because they're all, you take a look at that, it looked like it was a concentration camp, which essentially it was. It looks like they came out of the Holocaust. And what a sad thing. One of them was a young man, good-looking guy, a little bit heavier than perhaps he could have been, and now he looks like he's not even recognizable. Not even recognizable. Look, I can tell you that those people have been badly hurt, both mentally and physically. I'm talking about the young women that came out also previously. And I think one of the reasons they're doing this is because they're probably sending the best. What you see is probably the best because they want to send people that look at least healthy. And that's not healthy. These people have been badly hurt. They've been interviewed by our representatives. They've been interviewed by Israeli representatives, and they're really hurting. They are really hurting mentally and physically. And I think Hamas is looking at that and saying, well, it's not going to get much better than that because they probably send out their best as a representative, and they've got more to send out, and they probably feel that they can't do that because it's not going to make them look very good.
Is the ceasefire delay that, sir? Should the ceasefire then be off?
Well, I would say this, and I'm going to let that because that's Israel's decision. But as far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday. And if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2. Saturday at 12 o'clock. And after that, I would say all hell is going to break out. And I don't think they're going to do it. I think a lot of them are dead. I think a lot of the hostages are dead. I think it's a great human tragedy what's happened, how people can be that mean to do. I mean, the one guy was Saturday at 12. We want them all back. I'm speaking for myself. Israel can override it. But from myself, Saturday at 12 o'clock, and if they're not here, all hell is going to break out.
Mr. President, in the interview this weekend, you said that Palestinians would not be guaranteed the right to return or to develop it. What did you mean by that?
Not so, distant area from where we're talking about, the Gaza Strip. And I think they were very positive about providing land. What we need is land. And if we could build a nice place for people to live safely, everybody in Gaza would do it. They've been persecuted. They've been spit on. They've been treated like. Now they never had an alternative. Now they have an alternative. And as far as Hamas is concerned, you're seeing the real Hamas now with the hostages.
What is it on Gaza? You have
Who are you from? Where?
the Wall Street Journal, sir.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Jordanian leader is coming in to see you.
Yeah.
Folks in Jordan have expressed opposition to taking in more Gazans, more Palestinians. How are you going to convince him to do otherwise?
I think he'll take. I do think he'll take, and I think other countries will take also. They have good heart. All going to leave when they have a place that's a better alternative. When they have a nice place that's safe, they're all going to leave. It's a hellhole right now.
But how are you so sure that the U.S. forced them to leave?
You're going to see that they're all going to want to leave.
Mr. President, when it comes to Saturday noon, are you doing American hostage still being held by Hamas right now? You worried about
Look, she's trying to stop a bullet being fired at her, okay? Kind of a
And so my apologies about that. What I was saying was I think Trump did an excellent job when it comes to the executive orders with the steel, the economic plays. I'm excited about his economic movements and actions. I think the Hamas and Israel conflict really undermines his administration and our stance on peace all over the world and being leaders of bringing all players together, actors together to create an environment, a climate of peace and prosperity. And so I'm praying that, you know, all parties can find a better way to get to peace. And it's mandatory. The American people voted for peace. And so these things must come into an existence without conditions. There is no conditions for freedom and peace. You know, that's constitutional law. You have the right to pursue a happiness, liberties, freedoms, and peace, land, property, your culture, the practice of your culture, your religion. You can't violate somebody else's religion, their religious belief, and the free exercise thereof. You can't violate somebody else's liberties and freedoms and economic freedom and security and prosperity, all these things. So I pray that we exercise wisdom on that account. So just for a quick exercise, black as a noun is Old English black, the color black also. And this is black as a noun, right? From noun use of black, adjective, which is its original part of speech. And it is attested from late 14th century as dark spot in the pupil of the eye. The meaning dark-skinned person in African is from 1620s, perhaps late 13th century, and blackamoor is from 1540s. So this is just a little bit of a civics test. So we got blackamoor as a noun. We're going to break it down. Quote, dark-skinned person and black-skinned African is from 1540s, from black as the adjective plus more with connecting elements. So we can see black as an adjective, so it's going to give you or attempt to give you the description of the noun. More is the proper noun with connecting that. So you can see that where the fraud has taken place. Okay, so you're like, well, black. So as an adjective, the same root produced Middle English black, or blake. We're in the second paragraph, from Old English black, blac, bright, shining, glittering, pale. So when I say, well, when they say the enslaved black people, I'm thinking in my head, well, according to etymology, black mean pale, bright, to bleach, right? So like how do we, right? In the certain, can either one of the pale complexions or dark complexion. So it's like in this mental exercise, I'm saying, who the heck are they referring to? Because they got dark-skinned people up here in the picture, but then they're saying enslaved black people. So I'm like, well, black mean pale. So you're saying enslaved pale people? Right? So I'm just, let me go back. I want to make sure that you guys understand my concepts. Where is he getting these concepts from? Why did he say that? So we go to the more part of the connecting elements. So we say, well, more, well, they say North African Berber, one of the races dwelling in Barbaria. Also applied to the Arabic. I'm in the second paragraph, right? Of more as a noun, capital MOOR. So it said, being a dark people in relations to European, their names in the Middle Ages was a synonym for Negro, later 16th, 17th century. So, well, wait a minute. So I'm just confused, like my man said. So from 1619 to 1865, according to that earlier piece that we had looked at about the Kendrick Lamar halftime performance and the symboling, the messaging, the signaling that he was issuing from his performance. So when it was like we talking about $97 trillion, that's old for the enslavement of Black people. But I'm like, well, that's a pretty nice number at 97 trillion, right? And I'm like, but the only problem is, it's like, who the heck is enslaved Black people? Because Black means pale. You got to have a national descent. So my national descent name, I'm Moorish. This was prior to colonialization, right? This is prior to the enslavement, where our name, our national identity was converted over into Negro. The Negroes are Moors. So, right? So we just want to look at, some of the relationships between the parties. This is just a little exercise. So we go into these Barbary treaties from the Yale Law School. And I want to point out something. We talk about being a nation of faith. So it says here, Article 11 of this treaty with Tripoli, it says, as the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility against Muslim men, and as the said states never have entered into any war or act of hostility against any Mohammedan nation, and it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries. So that was what John Adams wrote. Let's see what else. That's 1786 to 1816. And then, so here's the first treaty with the United States. And as you can see the timeline here. And this is between the Moroccan Empire and the USA, what is referred to as the Moroccan-American Treaty. Now, before the enslavement period, there was no applying to, like the so-called people of African descent as Black people. So that came as a byproduct of slavery, actually. The enslavement of free Moors, and it was all spawned off wars. It's really a war. So now you're really a political prisoner. So I'm just kind of giving you some reference points in this mental exercise as we operate in this adapt chamber during this history hour here on Brother Ill Global. So you can see the blot out of information. They're like, wait a minute. How did we go from free Moors to enslaved Black people? So it's a history issue. There's a history discrepancy here because we can see as things take shape here, the Constitution 1787, this relationship is 1787. We're starting at 84, officially put on paper, on wax, on record, 86, 87. It was ratified in 89. These are the realities, right? You can see this says what? Author, John Adams, right? It says right there, author, John Adams. So this is what John Adams wrote, President of the United States at this particular time period. And this is what he wrote. He wrote that as the United States, right? So we go into the relationship between the Moroccan Empire, okay, and the American citizens of the United States, the constitutional republic. And just kind of name if any of the citizens of the United States or any person under their protection shall have any dispute. It talks about like the consular relationships. This Article 20, establishes that. And it talks about, and whenever the council shall require any aid or assistance from our government to enforce his decisions, it shall be immediately granted to him. And in 21, it talks about if a citizen of the United States shall kill or wound or more, or on the contrary, if a more shall kill or wound a citizen of the United States, the law of the country shall take place and equal justice shall be rendered. Right? And so it's kind of interesting because when we talk about reparations, restitution, we're talking about you can't go into a court of law, right? And the first rule at law is status, and status is established through identifying the parties, right? Because there's a breach of trust. Trust meaning contract. We have an agreement, and that's totally void when you put a slave brand, when you operate under a slave brand as Black, Negro, colored, and that's operating under a misnomer or a race misclassification. And that's done intentionally to remove your inherent rights, your ability to inherit those national, for lack of better terms, your national rights. So it's not even recognized that law because you're operating under the color of law, right? So you don't have a nationality on file. And so it's like, well, I'm descendant of Moroccans, born in America, Moorish American, right? And so I'm protected under the Constitution and treaty law, right? And so if the United States government as a government took an unconstitutional action against me, against my inherited rights, I have a claim. I have a claim for that relief. There's a judicial relief that I'm granted. Now, I won't say granted, I will say guaranteed. Why? Because we got the agreement, right? This is an agreement. Look at Article 6. If any more shall bring citizens of the United States or their effects to his majesty, the citizen shall immediately be set at liberty and the effects restored. And in like manner, if any more not a subject of these dominions shall make prize of any citizen of America or their effects and bring them into the ports of his majesty, they shall be immediately released, as they will then be considered as under his majesty's protection. And so when they came and forced you, what's called forced assimilation, which is an international law violation, but that's later. It's also a constitutional law violation under Article 1, Section 10, because it preserves your inherent right to consent or not to consent. In one term, contract, right? Your obligations to contract. So the contract law, contracts are voluntarily, right? You got to be of, sound mind, free, voluntary. This is where you give me your consent to terms and conditions. And so when you operate under a false identity, you are unidentified party. You're stateless, meaning you're unidentified nationally. And so you have national rights, you got national treaties and constitutions, which acts as trust agreements. And what happens is you're under the protection of these agreements. You're under the protection of God, first and foremost, the promise of God. These are two, for the record, these are two religious nations, basically. These are two nations of faith, right? Even though we have a declaration from John Adams on the Article 11 from the Treaty of Tripoli, where he says the United States government is not founded on a Christian religion. But the Moroccan Empire is an Islamic nation, even though, right, it recognizes many different religions and active operations within this border, within this jurisdiction, right? They ain't warring on you because you practicing this faith and that faith. We're brothers. We all come out of the same, you know what I mean, the universal creator, though we might dispense information out of the different houses and may have, you know, a certain culture or a certain way that we practice or give honors pursuant to our customary operations. So my point is this, in this mental exercise, for us to become, you know, continue to ascend to a more efficient American citizenry, we got to know the history. In order to make America great again, we got to know the history, because that's what's been blotted out and misconstrued, and now we're making the same mistakes, you know, that we made in the past, and we got to have opportunity. So my point is, these are two, you know, as you know, heard President Trump said, "In God we trust." In God we trust. And so it's the English term, Arabic term for the creator is Allah, right? And so this has been translated in English, right, and submitted to Congress. And then on the flip side of that, it was translated in Arabic and filed in the courts of Morocco. And that's what it kind of talks about that, and said this treaty of peace and friendship established between us and the United States of America, which is confirmed and which we have ordered to be written in the books and sealed with our royal seal at our court of Morocco on the 25th day of the blessed month of Shaban in the year 1200, trusting in God it will remain permanent. So, and so that was, and we move over here. Boom. So now we go into George Washington to Sidi Muhammad, December the 1st, 1789. So I'm just showing the relations in the very beginning of the United States and its so-called founding fathers, their relations with the Islamic world. Okay. And so this notion that this great, you know, beef between, you know, the Islamic world and the Christian world or the Catholic world, or this is totally an illusion. Because the Moroccan Empire backed the United States, recognized, the first nation to recognize and back them with the rest of the Islamic world, with Tripoli, Algiers, Tunis, etc. And so the first treaty we just looked at, I think it was 1797, as far as the first treaty we looked at on the show today, was the Treaty of Tripoli, Article 11. Okay, we wanted to identify, we talk about America is not a Muslim country, this, that, and that. Listen, I'm going to go to the founding fathers, so-called founding fathers, framers of the Constitution. And then we're going to, what is their official stance and relations with the Islamic world? Because what we've been getting from narratives and what we've been seeing is from images is an ongoing conflict, and we're headed towards another conflict. Why we're headed with another conflict with Iran or in the Middle East, anywhere, right? We have a history of positive relations to get this nation moving into the right direction. This is George Washington to Sidi Muhammad, December the 1st, 1787, New York City, right? So since the date, and he was talking about since the day of the letter, which the late Congress, by their president, addressed to your imperial majesty, the United States of America have thought proper to change their government and to institute a new one, agreeable to the Constitution. So we had to set this thing up. We had to get rid of the old stuff and set this up, agreeable to the Constitution, of which I have the honor of herewith enclosing a copy. Like, here's the receipt that we're a legitimate, organized nation of people standing on the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, right? So the time necessarily employed in this arduous task and the derangement occasioned by so great thought, though peaceable a revolution, will apologize and account for your majesty's not having received those regular advices and marks of attention. And you do know they're talking about those tributes that was in place pursuant to the arrangements, right? Because we provided, or let me say this: the Moroccan Empire at this time provided their dominions to the United States commerce. So we was back in the economy. They were back in the economy. The Moors was back in the economy. You know what I'm saying? And like, what are you talking about? Well, it says, though peaceable revolution will apologize and account for, right? This is the reason why we haven't got with you, right? You should be expecting to receive those regular advices and marks of attention from the United States, which the friendship and magnanimity of your conduct towards them afforded reason to expect. So, look, I just got in position. Give me an opportunity to get settled in and get things together. So he talks about in the second paragraph, he said, the United States have unanimously appointed me to the supreme executive authority. Supreme, that's something that Trump's aware of, right? It's like, in this nation, Your Majesty's letter of the 17th of August, 1788, which by reason of the dissolution of the late government remain unanswered, right, have been delivered to me. I have also received the letters which your Imperial Majesty have been so kind as to write in favor of the United States to the Bashas of Tunis and Tripoli. That was those treaties that we were just reading. And I present to you, right, the sincere, or which led to that, the sincere acknowledgments and thanks for the United States for the important marks of your friendship for them. We greatly regret that the hostile disposition of those regencies, right, towards this nation who have never injured them is not to be removed on terms in our power to comply with. So we're not going to mess with your people. Within our territories, there are no mines, either of gold or silver, in this young nation. And that's I don't want to blow past that information. Okay. But we'll come back to that different time. But that was a lot and a little. Right, that was a lot and a little. So he was saying, we greatly regret the hostile disposition of those regencies. What regencies? Those were Moorish regencies. And he was saying toward this nation, who have never injured them, is not to be removed on terms in our powers to comply with. Within our territories, there are no mines, either of gold or silver, in this young nation just recovering from the waste and dissolution of a long war. So he's giving a financial statement here, right? Saying, look, we just got settled in. We just got done with the revolution. We haven't had time to really set up our infrastructure to get the gold and stuff like this and get our economy going, our agriculture and economy going. So we can pay back our obligations because, the Moroccan Empire backed us. But he says, but our soil is bountiful and our people industrious, right? That's the guarantor, right? I'm saying that we good. We're gonna produce it for sure. And we have reason to flatter ourselves that we shall become, he said, we shall gradually become useful to our friend. So, I mean, it's all there. So all this great marketing piece in contemporary times to develop hate for other faiths and religions, Muslims, just Christians versus Muslims. Go back and study the holy wars between the Moors and Rome, right? Go back and study this stuff. Go back and study the Renaissance era. Go back and study the Spanish Inquisition, the Battle of Tours, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, this is important so we don't put ourselves in the same predicament as our predecessors, you know, the ones who came before us, and we wrapped up in forever wars, and we continuously doing stuff to put the nations of the earth in danger, including ourselves. This is just ridiculous. We're for peace and not destruction, right? We're not for the. So let me continue. The encouragement which your majesty has been pleased, right? So we're in this next paragraph here. It said, the encouragement which your majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce with your dominion. So it's like this is a mutual arrangement. We gave up something. The Moroccan Empire invested into the United States of America. And the encouragement, right, which your majesty has been pleased generously, right, generously to give. We gave up. What did they give up? To give to our commerce with what? What back to commerce? Because where are they going to dig the gold up at? When they talk about getting the gold, when they talk about the gold, right, and the silver and the mines, oh, where are they going to get it from? They got to need some land. Where's the land at? Where's the land at? So he said, the encouragement which your majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce, right? So we all know more now about, we know, I hope you know who the U.S. Secretary, who's the Secretary of the U.S. Commerce Department, right? Who's the Commerce Secretary? That's big because we're talking about economics. We're talking about economics and economic policies now. So you say, look, he was already talking about, man, look, man, we got reason to flatter ourselves. Why? The soil is rich and bountiful. That's what he said in the previous paragraph. So this is a mental exercise. It's a civics test to make sure we know the history. If we're going to be American patriots, if we're going to make America great again, right? If we're going to make America's mentally healthy again, we got to know our history. Okay, we got to know our relationships. We got to know why it's important, and we got to know why it's important to carry the banner of American. When you said, I'm an American, you said, this is America. This is a land of peace, land of the brave, the land of the free, right? The land of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, right? And so when we're talking about enslaved black people, we're like, well, black mean pale. The people that you attempting to refer to, those were Moors. And we're at the beginning of the history of the United States, both internally and externally, the internal affairs and the external affairs, international affairs, foreign relations, the financial affairs. He's giving a financial statement. George Washington. This is George Washington we're talking about. George Washington wrote this. I didn't write it. But it's preserved. This document is maintained in governmental records for the record. So anybody can go and inspect these documents. So it says, the encouragement which your majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce with your dominions. That's the relationship. Look, man, we just got out of the Revolutionary War. I just got appointed. I'm legitimate. I'm sending you this letter, this communication, let you know it's on the floor. We're finna get it popping. We got y'all. Good looking for everything that you have done for us in writing, legally, politically, constitutionally. You know, we got you. We got you. It's good, right? And so he says, George Washington says, the punctuality with which you have caused the treaty with us to be observed and the just and generous measures taken in the case of Captain Proctor made a deep impression on the United States and confirmed their respect for and attachment to your imperial majesty. So now that we out of the dark, okay, we'll come back over here and we're on online etymology dictionary. And we go down here and it says clearly, being a dark people more as a noun, being a dark people in relation to Europeans Their name in the Middle Ages was a synonym for Negro. So the Negro are Moors. This is a mental exercise so we can get rid of the illusion of it's a nation that's referred to as black. It's nothing, it's no nation. Right now, it's no nation, or then it's no nation, it's black nation. Black mean pale. All right, so we went through the grammar exercise already. Went through the etymology, right? So we got that exercise done for our mental exercise. We had to go through a set, had to do a set dealing with etymology first, right? Reading is fundamental. Reading is fundamental. So the encouragement which your majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce with your dominions, the punctuality with which you have caused the treaty with us to be observed, and the just and generous measures taken. So wait a minute, we had to observe this. We had to stop what we doing and say, whoa, wait a minute, we got to deal with cuz now, man. My man put us on. They put us on. Who put us on? The Moroccan Empire. They gave us this parcel so we can go build our commerce. This backed our commerce. Because where does the gold come from? The gold is the money. Article 1, Section 10. Gold and silver is the money. It's legal tender in the United States. You need lands, precious metal come from out the soil. He said the soil is bountiful. And our people is industrious. I mean, they ready to work. They ready to put this work in. You talking about being industrious? He said, no, man, my people. He said, our people. You know what I'm saying? They're talking about a nation. Our people was ready. This was a working class of free men and women. A working class of people. They said, wait a minute, our people is industrious. And the soil is bountiful. That's powerful. And we have reason to flatter ourselves that we shall, like we shall overcome. He said, we shall gradually become useful to our friends. So we friends. We have a relationship. We more than friends. We brothers. We family. What we doing caught up in some war? What war? That's not how we started, right? And so we talk about the relations between the two parties. And so this illusion that this is a Christian country. This we got to get rid of. I hear a lot of like discriminatory rhetoric. This is that was my coin. When you talk about I can't even say it, but anti-constitution. That's what I call it. Anti-constitution rhetoric, anti-American rhetoric. It's no war. I'm Muslim. It's no war. I'm Moorish American. Muslim. I'm Moorish American. I'm a descendant of Moroccans born in America. Contrary to black, Negro, and color, there's no nation. That identifies no national. There ain't no national origin, national descent. What are you talking about here? You covering up my illustrious history in the beginning and have everything to do with the support, development, the backing of the United States, the most powerful nation, wealthiest nation on earth. You couldn't come up some enslaved black people. What are you talking about? Enslaved? Why you got your picture up there? And this guy's supposed to represent me, right? Or I wouldn't say represent, but supposed to he looks like Brother L. Wait a minute, I'm Moorish American. He's talking about he's black. He's a black American. Like he's a pale American. What is the definition of American? That's important to know. We have to go to Webster Dictionary, unabridged, 1865, and go in there and get the definition. Aboriginal, indigenous. So we've been failing the civic test as a collective American citizenry and wonder why we've been written off and getting ripped off. Because we don't know our history. We have no clue. And those who are supposed to know have been subverted to overthrow the Constitution and peddle white versus black, Christian versus Muslim, Islam, we don't know what a woman is, men and women's sports, children can overthrow parents. We don't recognize parental authority. We got a certain thing called child support. Man, what is going on within the United States Constitutional Republic? What happened? You don't even have a right to privacy. All of a sudden, people don't understand what a Fifth Amendment is, a Fourth Amendment is, a Second Amendment. They came up and souped up and created a 14th and 15th Amendment to support black and white stuff. Then we can say, well, look, man, we not civil rights, my race. Race, that's a misclassification of race, actually a genocidal device that's stripping you of your inherent rights protected by the Constitution and fulfillment of God's promise to his people. To his people who are free people. Free to practice your culture, free to know your history, free to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And to pursue a happiness and joy. And so where are we at? Where are we at not knowing our history? So he says, look, man, going back to George Washington, he said, the encouragement which your majesty has been pleased duly to get our commerce with your dominions. What do I challenge the audience? Tell me, what does dominion mean? What is the define dominions? Right? Define dominions. And so, you know, in closing, so it gives me pleasure to have this opportunity of assuring your majesty that while I remain at the head of this nation, I shall not cease to promote every measure that may conduce to the friendship and harmony, which so happily subsists between your empire. So when he says your empire and them, he said your empire. He said, wait a minute. So there's a recognition of, well, there's a Moroccan empire. There's a confession and an acknowledgement that we back to commerce with our dominion. So what does dominions mean? There's an acknowledgement and confession and a verification and an affirmation that, you know, we have concluded the revolution. We had to go through one. We've replaced the old government and set in place a new one agreeable to the Constitution. And I have a copy enclosed herewith. So that's confirmation, verification, and validation that I'm able to speak on behalf of this nation. And I'm going to acknowledge that, look, we behind schedule, right? And being, what was the word he used? Useful. They was in the process of becoming useful and paying back that support that they are receiving, because where they're going to dig in the soil at that was given to them. Right? And so we got to understand this, because we know that the Declaration of Independence, it tells us a story about the reason why they denounced their allegiance to the crown and disband from this political ties, from the cut the political bands and pledge their allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. It was a reason for the Revolutionary War. And there's a history to it and a story to it and an origin point, right? So that origin point is important. It's essential to the building block or the redevelopment or the reforming, or should I say the reform or the resocializing of the American public. Because in order for the authority to return, to be recouped, to be redeemed to the American people must be competent. They must be the masters of common sense. That's why President Trump said we're a nation of common sense. I'm an administration of common sense. We have returned back to the golden era, the golden age of America. And that's why I brought up this particular content for this mental exercise on the Brother L Global, is so that we can assist and aid in the upliftment of fallen humanity and bring you out the gold documents, the gold scrolls. They're talking about gold and silver in these documents, right? And that's what backs, that's the real money. That's the real wealth. And so when we go into discussions about they set up like a bank robbery or a heist. That's what they set up within the United States, and that's where you got the Federal Reserve, 1913. You got the incorporation of the District of Columbia, 1871. You got the engineer bankruptcy in 1929. At the same time, in 1927, that we probably never really talk about, there's international movement, there's political movement that help facilitate this stuff. Not just, here, but internationally. That the first king of Saudi Arabia recognizing in 1927 via the Treaty of Jabbar or Judah, right? And so you start to look at and examine and observe all of these political, events and activities, and you look at what happened, right? And so it's like, whoa. And they set all this stuff up. It's like, it's crazy. And so this is how we get to a president. Like, how did you get a President Trump? Because we started the show off showing you 25 years young President Trump and his position and disposition on the political affairs of the United States and the economic affairs. So, and what he would do, if he was in that position, and then look up 25, 30 years later, he's in that position. And you look at some of his words, his statements, his position and disposition 30, 40 years later. And you're like, wow, this guy, you can hold him to his word. Like he's been standing on that. And so it's no surprise when he takes certain actions. It's like, we're not surprised he's been saying that. And I don't know him. I don't know him personally. I know him from the entertainment, know him from politics. I don't know him. But he has a track record, documented track record at rendering his disposition and what he would do to solve the issue. So now he's in that position 30 years later, and he's taking the actions he said he would have took 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Right? He said the world is ripping us off. He gets in office 30 years later, and he says the world is ripping us off. Then he started taking action to end that practice and policy, i.e. foreign policy. Right? We have reform at the federal level when it comes to our foreign policy. So instead of taxing the American people to increase the wealth of foreign nations, we're going to tariff everybody in order to enrich the American people. One, morally, they've been tariffing us economically. It ain't even got to be morally. Though it's a moral clause in here, it's really, the moral clause is a mutuality. That's the moral clause, mutuality. Just like George Washington saying here, look, man, good looking. We're going to pay you back. We got you. We're going to become useful. Our soil is bountiful. So you ain't just give us some land. We ain't just own, some dominions. We ain't in North America on bog soil. We on the land of the milk and honey. It's worth fighting for, internally and externally. They said, look, we got rid of the late government and we put a new government in place, agreeable to the Constitution. We got rid of the Great Britons and that taxation system, taxing the American people or should I say, taxing the free people to make wealthy the monarch, the crown. They said, nah, we ain't doing that. Nah, it's called a revolution. We ain't doing that. We're free. You ain't taxing us nothing. We don't serve at the will and pleasure of no kings and queens from this point on. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created free and endowed with certain rights by their creator. We deem this unalienable, meaning this can never be taken away. You can't give it away. You can't sell it away. It can't be taken away from you. It's unalienable. It's your God-given right. It's a birthright. All men are born free. That's the birthright. We hold these truths. That's the Declaration. That's a plea to the nation. That's saying like we're a legitimate government over here, for lack of better terms, or however people want to look at it. But from what the angle I'm presenting right now, I say, well, wait a minute. If you go and look at it, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created free and endowed with certain rights by their creator. And they spelled this thing out. And then another document issued from the United States, it says the United States government is not founded on the Christian religion, not have any active hostility towards the Mohammedan nations. I'm Moorish American Muslim. Right? That is my national descent flag. You understand me? I'm born in America. I ain't here. And America was formerly known as a part and attachment to the Moroccan Empire. And where's he getting this stuff from? Right here. George Washington. George Washington. This data is maintained in the archives, government archives, George Washington. So, this is about the empowerment of the American people by bringing us our awareness to our history, the history, world history. We're talking about world history here. We're talking about gold and silver. Where's the gold at? Where's the gold at? We was talking about gold and silver. We're talking about gold again under Trump. Where's the gold at? Where's our gold at? Where's our silver at? That came from our forefathers dug the trenches and went and got that gold. Where they at? Where's it at?
Radical authoritarians who say, oh, one time I had a libertarian come up to me. He says, I'm not happy with your position on the Fed. And I said, why is that? He says, you don't want to end it. I said, what do you mean? He says, you only want to audit it. No, folks, I want to audit it as a process of when the people demand, oh boy, we need to end this. Sort of like USAID. They investigated, exactly. They had the investigation, they had the audit, and the American people, I'll bet you 75% of the American people, except the really radical authoritarians, will say, oh no, you know what they're talking about now, how it was saving lives, saving lives, it's unconstitutional and all that. I'm excited about the interest going on, in people talking about it. And I think at times, I've always guarded against over expectation or saying, boy, we have it. And I'd much rather be surprised that things turned out much better than I said. And in a way, the attention right now that we're getting on this issue, it surprises. It's still is a big surprise, even though, why didn't they do it a long time ago? Why did we ever get the Federal Reserve? So anyway, I'm sort of excited about what's going on and the interest they have. And I think everything comes from the people. When there's a prevailing attitude, the ideas can't be stopped. And I wonder if this is getting to be a prevailing attitude, about sound money. It's been around for a long time and it has its ups and downs, but it started thousands of years ago of the significance and the importance of understanding what monetary policy is.
Yeah, there are a lot of naysayers out there. Elon is the, our friend Jonathan Turley said his opponents are calling him, Muskenstein. He's this Frankenstein monster. And I'm sure that, not everything is perfect. But what I find strange, Dr. Paul, is people basically saying, I don't want to know. He's got a team of young engineers, young, very bright people, and they're going through places like Treasury. They're going through places like US.
And that's the immaturity that we cannot demonstrate on a global scale, because they're going to continue to cut you off, right? So it's like, what do you mean I don't want to know? Like, that's the whole purpose of the era we're in. We're a more enlightened society. We're more enlightened because we have more insight, because we have more access to data, factual, science-backed, mathematically backed, fact-based data. This level of access you were entitled to thousands of years ago, right? And as time has moved on, you've been cut off, disconnected, disenfranchised from your rights to know. Freedom of information. You're paying for it anyways. What are you doing? What do you mean you don't want to know? Like, how is that a responsible? How are you being? Where's your prudence at? So there's a default when you don't want to know. That creates a default, and that's what supports. That's the real support of the administrative state, the current default from the people. The manage, we're the managers. We're the hiring and firing managers. So therefore the post is vacant. The office is vacant. There's no authority. There's no oversight. There's no we the people oversight. The constitutional republic is suspended. The constitutional republic only works when the people are aware of their inherent rights and are actively exercising those rights. Without that, there's no activation of the law. There's no defense. There's no relief. There's only oppression, suppression, depression. That's it.
CID, and they're saying, you guys would not believe what we found here. It's incredible. And instead of saying, wow, you guys are doing a great public service, this really is terrible stuff. They're saying, we don't want to know, don't tell us. But over the weekend, it was pretty amazing. We talk about the Fed. We want to talk about the Fed today. Put on that first clip, because this is something I just updated this. I just looked up this morning and updated it. So Senator Mike Lee over yesterday, he said, raise your hand if you'd like to see Ron Paul as Federal Reserve Chairman. And to which Elon Musk responded, that would be amazing. And that has now 40.2 million views, Dr. Paul. You probably never realized, I thought you would get that, but it started out a little earlier. I think it was a day early if you go to the next one. Now, this is a friend of the Institute. In fact, a former Ron Paul scholar, Liam McCollum, he tweeted out yesterday or 2 days ago, Doge and Elon Musk should let Ron Paul lead a Federal Reserve audit team. To which Elon Musk said, good idea. And that was picked up everywhere on X.
Well, my first reaction is go slow. Think about this and don't get too excited, because I know the ups and downs of all this.
But, people are talking about, well, let's audit it. And you're right. Audit the Fed first, because that will provide the ammunition to shut it down. Because when you saw what was happening with AID, that can't be reformed. Get rid of it. It's awful. And that'll be so. What would you anticipate if you went in there and you just really ripped the lid off of it? What kinds of stuff do you think you'd see?
Where have we been for so long? Why didn't our schools teach something about the Constitution? Why did the schools give up on the idea of the tradition of our country, talking about silver and gold as being the only legal tender we were allowed? And that is, still changing. So that is what I think has to be done. What I'm delighted about right now that's going on is, the Constitution is clear that the states can only use gold and silver as legal tender to keep the federal government honest. And I think that is just great. And so we've been working with the states that it's their responsibility to use only gold and silver, but the federal government won't let them.
Yeah.
One of the answers will be competing currencies. And the competing currencies, from my viewpoint, shouldn't be strictly limited except by the laws of fraud, fraud and deceit, that, and then let the market decide. One time I had a libertarian come up to me. He says, tuning into the Liberty Report. With us today, Daniel McAdams, our co-host.
I thought you would get that.
But I'll tell you, I've enjoyed reading because it fascinates me that the history of the importance of money and central banking is really important. And once you tie that into all the excesses, so today they're talking about efficiency of government.
Yeah.
Well, that's good, and I support it. But I also urge them to think about what's behind it. What do you have to have in order to have an empire and militarism around the world and a runaway welfare state and a government taking over education and all this stuff? And that is, you have to have ideology that supports that. Now, I didn't invent the ideology, it came from history, and it also is something that is currently undermined. I had to get it from, people like Leonard Reed, people who wrote like Lou Rockwell and others that put the information out. So I see that as important. And I'm sort of in the middle of that, excited about it, but I never got offered a good job in a university to go and teach this stuff. I was still practicing medicine, but that kept me in a very practical world.
You've actually been the biggest professor in history because the whole country, the whole world is your classroom on this. But, the Fed is the key. And I remember we've talked about it on the show when we went and visited with Tucker Carlson. And he said, at first I thought, this Fed stuff, it's esoteric. I don't understand. I don't think it's that important. I don't know why he's into it. And then later he came to realize, I sort of felt that way myself because, this Fed stuff is interesting, but I'm in favor of anti-war activity to stopping the war. And then I finally realized the Fed is the key. It's great that we're finding out what Treasury does. We're finding out what AID does. But the Fed is the head of the Hydra. That's where all the money comes from. That's where it flows from.
Yeah, I was fascinated with that interview with with Tucker because he says when I heard that, because he didn't go out there, he was out there as an academician and an honest journalist and this sort of thing. But he explained his surprise. What is he doing? He came from an outfit at the time. It wasn't exactly libertarian, but he was very honest and upfront, and he was very complimentary because who was giving me validation? It was a lot of young people that we met and talked, and he was writing an article on me.
Yeah, and that's actually, and I, of course, for the life of me, I can't find it. I read a great article about how Musk is going through these places, and he's bringing a team of young engineers. We talked about it earlier. Who are coming in and finding all this stuff. It's incredible, that what they're finding. So the young people are key. They do understand it. But, people are talking about, well, let's audit it. And you're right, audit the Fed first, because that will provide the ammunition to shut it down. Because when you saw what was happening with AID, that can't be reformed. Get rid of it. It's awful. And that'll be, so what would you anticipate if you went in there and you just really ripped the lid off of it? What kinds of stuff do you think you'd see?
Where have we been for so long? Why didn't our schools teach something about the Constitution? Why did the schools give up on the idea of the tradition of our country talking about silver and gold as being the only legal tender we were allowed, and that is, you know, still changing. So that is what I think has to be done. What I'm delighted about right now that's going on is, you know, the Constitution is clear that the states
and money. Simple.
No, the big one, the big economic issue is most people know they print a lot of money and debt and all that. But what they don't realize is a lot of other stuff that goes on. Prices go up and people don't want to believe that. You have to blame profits and things like that. The other thing is they don't talk about you know, prices going up for other reasons and sorting it out. Prices will go up because the dollar's going down, but prices might go up because of a hurricane. And there's a big difference to that, because if it goes up because of a hurricane, that's not inflation, because you have to take the money from something else, you know, and you have to deal with your priorities. And the other thing that I would hope to find and emphasize and teach people is the principle of malinvestment. And this is what Mises and other great economists have taught, that the interest rate is very, very important. It should represent savings. You know, if the people save, I remember not too long ago, in 1968, I moved to Texas and to start my medical practice, and I had to, you know, get a loan for a house and my medical office, and they didn't have any money to loan to me close to where I lived. And they said, yeah, but this town down the road, 50 miles away, it just happens that they have more money, they've had more success, and they saved more money, so you go there. So people have to realize that interest rates, well, that's a pain in the neck. You have to wait till somebody works and saves some money. What they want to do is they want low interest rates, pretending that there's a lot of savings out there. And people say, wow, you know, people got a little bit nervous because when they kept it for 10 years at 0%, at real rates, at 0%, they know a lot of people made a lot of debts, including our federal government, and including everybody who took a check during that time, because it sounded like a good deal, but it was all bad investment. And of course, if my theory is that when it gets out of hand, that debt has to be liquidated. The bad investments have to be liquidated. And I would hope to find the evidence to prove that. I mean, it's out there, and the Austrian economists have talked about this for a long time, but it's been known for probably thousands of years that money didn't come out of the thin air.
One of the things we're learning from looking inside USAID is how involved they were in regime change overseas. Do you think that the Federal Reserve is involved in regime change and things of that nature overseas?
Of course, I put out that statement that I believe that, because I always had resistance from the audit, from foreign entanglements, foreign affairs. They don't want you to know of all the foreign activity. I think when there's most of these so if the Fed creates credit and bails out a country someplace, or if we're supporting some war faction someplace, it's not that difficult to make sure they can manipulate the budget and the weapons and the monetary system and keep some of those companies or countries from going bankrupt. We're bankrupt, but we fudge because we still have the reserve currency. I think they would find out there's a lot more activity involved with foreign countries subsidizing our empire and subsidizing the people we say they're our friends and we have to take care of them, and they've been able to get away with it. I would hope that the evidence to show that it's not long lasting, that it always comes to an end. This is not new. It's been there. They might have to look at the current events, but they might have to we might want to suggest them. You ought to look at history. If this is what you want to do, and if you don't follow through with these cuts in spending that Musk and others are proposing, I mean, these problems are going to come. And this is the biggest event that's going on right now with the Committee on Efficiency. It is not exactly put together the way I think it should be, but it's doing a lot of good because they're emphasizing all this spending and debt. And Mises warned, he says, there's going to be a crack-up boom, you know, because prices are going to go up. Oh, inflation. That's how we get rid of the recession. We have to prevent depressions and recession. So they I think that's going to happen. But the crack out boom is when people throw in their chips. They just get rid of it. And it does. I still hope that we wake up and understand these things so we don't have to go through the ringer. Can you imagine if our country and our dollar goes through the ringer like the Venezuela money?
Yeah.
You know, if that would have been a worldwide currency, that would be a big deal. And that would come, and that would be a real dangerous period. It's already getting dangerous because there's so much politicization of this. I'd like to see people try to understand that the discrepancy between rich and poor has nothing to do with somebody like Musk or Trump involved in free market economics, and they pick the right things or produce a good product.
Yeah.
And it's the marketplace. Yeah, under that system, the market rewards them, and not the government. So if they could come around to that, they would have to accept a principle and a blueprint that's been around for a couple years, and I think our government schools have forgotten about it. But that outline and sort of a guideline on what we could do, because when the young people who seem to be getting really excited what we do, I said, start with reading the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's surprising how much evidence is in there. And then I said, along with that, because they had a lot of respect for natural law. That is, people, and I believe this, all the way back before history was written, the human race understood something about natural law, because even before language was well known, the cultures knew that it didn't make any sense to kill each other, and that they knew that if you carved out a cave to live in, you better watch out. You don't just walk in here and take it. Property rights were there. So that is the kind of thing that we should all be looking at. Not only the guideline of the Constitution, but also the history that's available to us.
And what would you say to the people who said, well, back in 2008, when we had the meltdown, we had to have the Fed come in and save us from Armageddon because.
So I want to go. I want to go to a couple definitions. So feudal law. Let's see what we got. So feudal law, according to Black's Law Dictionary, refers to the system of laws and customs governing the feudal system, which was a hierarchical structure of land ownership and obligation in medieval Europe. Under feudal law, land was held in exchange for service or labor, typically with a lord granting land, a fief, to a vassal in return for military or other services. This system established relationships based on loyalty, duty, and tenure, rather than absolute ownership of land. And I'm in my chat. So we got out here and said, according to Black's Law Dictionary, fiat currency is government issued money that is not backed by a physical commodity like gold or silver, but instead derives its value from government regulation or law. The term fiat means let it be done, signifying that's a spell. That's a spell. That's how you end a spell. The term fiat means let it be done, signifying that the currency has value because the government decrees it as a legal tender for transactions and debt payments. Unlike commodity-backed money, fiat currency relies on public confidence and the stability of the issuing government. Examples include the US dollar, euro, and other national currencies in modern economies. So this is where So we could just get a better um, understanding of what Mr. Paul was explaining about the monetary policy of the United States, the importance of gold and silver. And this is coming from, we went back to 1786, 1787, traveled to 1789. We even touched in the 1540s, Blackamoor. And we went into where the Moors were given those slave brands, black, Negro, and colored, to conceal their true identity, their heritage history, their inheritance, their inherent rights, nationally protected. And so we broke that up. We went to the law of grammar, traveled that back almost to 1400s, 1500s, traveled forward to the 1600s because we stopped over at the halftime show when they was talking about Kendrick Lamar was signaling the signal, and somebody posted from 1619 to 1865 that the enslaved black people was owed 97 trillion, what would be worth $97 trillion for the forced labor, forced servitude in the industries of rice, sugar, cotton, and it was another one. So we took black people and put an etymology dictionary to it and found out when they were talking about black people, they're actually referring to the Moors who was labeled as black people. And that black actually is an adjective. And when you try to convert it to a noun, it's an adjective that means pale or to bleach, shining, bright, right? And so we put it into a noun on the etymology dictionary, referring to like African people, African descent. They were actually referring to the Blackamoors. We ended up pulling that apart and found out the Moors were names, national identity. Their nationality was converted as a synonym for Negro. So the Negroes were actually the Moors. Then we went into the Moors history with the United States. It's internal affairs and external affairs. It's financial affairs. It's monetary affairs. And that's where George Washington came in, giving us the financial statement and update. And we talked about the events in 1774 with the Declaration of Independence. I just touched briefly on the Articles of Confederation, Articles of Association, just kind of focusing in on a little bit of the internal affairs, not too much. And we correlated all that until right now, like, and all of the actions of right now about America returning back or entering to the golden age, the golden era of America, returning back to a common sense nation, restoring our financial integrity with the audits, the presidential review of every department, of every dollar, cent, penny, its operations, how it's structured, why it's structured, elimination of waste, corruption, etc. So we kind of went through all of that to get us to, to our heightened sense of awareness as the American people, as we the people. So we can see where our sovereignty, our constitution, our wealth was subverted to foreign powers, and it was done, through Congress, through the invasion of the three branches of government. So in Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution, as I just had chat bring up, let me see if it's in a good mood to talk to us.
Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution places restrictions on state governments to prevent them from infringing on federal authority and interfering with national economic stability. It contains three main clauses. Contracts Clause. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. Limits state sovereignty in foreign affairs. States cannot form treaties, alliances, or conduct diplomacy independently. prohibits states from issuing their own currency. Only gold and silver are constitutionally recognized as legal tender for states. Restricts economic interference. States cannot pass laws that impair contracts or retroactively criminalize actions, ex post facto laws. Forbids state-granted nobility. Prevents a system of aristocracy. Hasher 2. Import-Export Clause. No state shall, without the consent of the Congress, lay any imposts or duties on imports or exports, except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws, and the net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on imports or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of the Congress. States cannot impose tariffs or duties on imports, exports without congressional approval. Prevents states from disrupting national trade by placing undue burdens on commerce. 3. Compact Clause. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war, unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. Prevents states from maintaining military forces in peacetime without congressional approval. Restricts independent state diplomacy or compacts with foreign nations or other states without federal oversight. Allows self-defense in emergencies but limits state military actions. Key takeaways. Ensures economic and legal uniformity across states. Prevents states from acting as independent sovereign entities in foreign or economic matters. Preserves federal power over currency, trade, and military actions. Would you like further insight into how this section impacts modern state powers and financial policies?
Not yet, but okay, so now we can better understand Ron Paul's position. And it shouldn't be Ron Paul's position, it should be all of our position because you're talking about wealth. And so we can look at the Israel-Palestinian conflict, right? We can look at the USAID conflict, right? We can look at what other conflicts? The gender conflicts. We can look at the election conflicts. We can look at everything deserves to be under review. Every single thing. I agree 100% with the review, the forensic audit, the elimination of waste, the return of the sovereignty of the people, all of that. However, if you're not looking at Article 1, Section 10, and then looking at the feds, and then looking at Congress, executive branch, and judicial branch and saying, what the heck is going on? Then you're totally missing the point. We have an opportunity here to focus in the right direction. And what is that direction? It takes finance to uplift a nation, according to our prophet, Noble Drew Ali, who's the founder of the Moorish Divine and National Movement and the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America, the one who returned the access to the information of our nationality, birthrights, divine creed, and free national descent names, and the return of our heritage, and return of our nation, the redemption. So we had to go through a redemption process because we was blacked out. They created this illusion, this spell of black people and white people. And we actually, but again, we were in a vulnerable state coming out of slavery, right? What they called slavery, the imprisonment or the political prisoners, because now the nationalities, people were Americans of Moroccan descent. And now the history, the factual political history, right? Because you got access to that content today on the show, right? And we appreciate you being here. Gratitude for following the the details, the evidence presented here today. And so that's why I said if you don't know the history, how can you make America great again? It's just impossible. How can 80 million people say we're going to make America great again, but we don't know the history? How can you have order, peace, stability, prosperity in the inner cities of North America, in the inner communities of North America, and they don't know the history? Like Ron Paul said, they're not teaching this. They're not teaching. They gave up on teaching the Constitution. They don't want you to know about money. They don't want you to have no idea, because you're going to ask questions and say, well, what is this? Well, what is the Federal Reserve note? Why would I call it a dollar? And according to the etymology, dollar means gold, silver coin. Why would I call it money? And according to the Constitution, the only no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender and payments of debts. Tender means legal offer. So when we break the language down, we say, well, no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender, a legal offer, and the payments of debt. So how do you pay debts? What are you offering? You got to offer some money. You got to offer some money, right? Which was what? Gold and silver coin. So what is the Federal Reserve note, where you can't go into the bank and redeem your Federal Reserve note for gold and silver, that portion, that measurement that you're due, right? And so what system is that? It's a constitutional crisis. That's a constitutional crisis when Roosevelt issued the executive order. Let me see if I got that executive order here. Right? So I'm going to find it in just a second. But this clause reflects the framers' intent to establish a stable monetary system grounded in tangible assets, ensuring the integrity of economic transactions, right? So where's the integrity at? So how is the contracts valid, right? Because the transaction, what is the transaction supported by when there's no money in circulation? They removed the money out of the banks and said it was a bank holiday and declared the bank holiday. What do you mean a bank holiday? What are we celebrating? The greatest wealth heist in world history. American money was stolen. It was stolen. Where's the money? So while we talking about war with Iran, while we looking at these distractions, ultimately all distractions, because like Ron Paul said, it's all flowing from the Federal Reserve. It has unchecked powers. So what are we doing here? According to Black's Law Dictionary, fourth edition, legal tender refers to money that is legally valid for the payment of debts. It must be accepted when offered. Must be accepted. That's law. So you got gold and silver, you can pay your debts. So if we're not using gold and silver to pay the debt obligation, so we can't pay it because we don't have any gold and silver. So what are we doing? We're discharging debt. So the Constitution emphasizes on gold and silver as a legal tender was designed to protect citizens from the devaluation and instability of fiat currency. It's really that simple. So when we look at the congressional acts and the executive orders that removed gold and silver backing, the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, this act established the Federal Reserve centralizing control over monetary policy and moving away from the gold standard. It allowed the issuance of fiat currency not directly backed by gold or silver. Okay. So, two, you got the executive order 6102, 1933, signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. This order mandated the confiscation of gold from American citizens, requiring them to surrender their gold coins, bullions, and certificates to the Federal Reserve in exchange for paper currency. This effectively ended the gold standard for individuals. So that was excuse my language. I'm going to speak this under the First Amendment. I'm going to speak this under the divine principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. That was a war against the American people. The executive branch, did y'all hear that? That was an act of war against the American people. You went after the money of the American people. You didn't have any authority to do that. It said every state, right, shall make what? Nothing but gold and silver. How did you take the money? What authority did you have? You got a contract clause. The Constitution did not delegate the power of Roosevelt under a fake emergency, right? Under an engineered emergency to issue executive order to steal the gold? You're going to take the gold? What are you talking about? You're not taking my money. How can you take the money? Why would you even think taking the money was a good idea? Lawfully, like, what are we talking about here? So it's a signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. This order mandated the confiscation of gold from American citizens, requiring them to surrender their gold coins, bullions, and certificates to the Federal Reserve in exchange for paper currency. This effectively ended the gold standard for individuals. So let's look at the Gold Reserve Act of 1934. This act further solidified the government's control over gold by prohibiting the private ownership of gold and nullifying gold clauses. And it's 1934, okay? The Gold Reserve Act of 1934. This act further solidified the government's control over gold. That's money. So the government has, the state has taken control. So think about this. Can I come up and say, I have an executive order issued from my office for you to surrender your gold? I'm going to say it to you like this, your money. Okay, so your money. You have a right to pull out your pistol and actually use it or call the police or whatever means necessary to defend it. The answer is no, you're not going to honor that said request, because that's all it could be. It could be it can't be law, because law is enacted. So that means Congress will have to enact a law, but it would have a problem with being enacted because it's unconstitutional. So now the judicial branch step in and say, well, wait a minute, can't do that. So it was a complete breakdown of our constitutional system protecting our monetary policies, our economy, and ultimately our wealth. So the act further solidified the government's control. What act? The Gold Reserve Act. Okay, so you got the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. You have the Executive Order 6102, 1933, that was signed by Roosevelt, mandating the confiscation of gold from American citizens, requiring them to surrender their gold, coins, bullions, and certificates to the Federal Reserve in exchange for paper security. It was hijacking the American people. They was taking their money and giving them substitute money. Paper securities backed by nothing. The enforcement of fiat, meaning faith, let it be done, fiat currency. So the government get the gold, the government becomes a sovereign, and now the government is in possession and control of the sovereign wealth. It's no surprise Trump is saying the sovereign wealth fund. How did the government become a sovereign and the people become the servant? But I thought the government was a public servant designed, created to serve at the will and pleasure of the people, the de jure government, the sovereign. I thought we the people was the sovereign. So the sovereign owns the wealth. The wealth comes from the land. The precious metals comes from the land. The sovereign is the heirs to the land, to the estate, because there's a people of the land that existed prior to any establishing of the U.S. United States Constitutional Republic. That's why we went to the George Washington series and his issuance and his correspondence, and he was identifying. He said, well, man, we thank you for giving to our commerce your dominions. Our soil is bountiful, and our people are industrious, right? And he said we had no time to mine for gold and silver. So they minds was on the money. So I asked in the audience, well, what is the money today? What is that? Because that's not gold. And I can't convert it. I can't redeem it. I'm supposed to be entitled under Article 1, Section 10 to go into any locale, bank, credit union, etc., to redeem that Federal Reserve note in gold and silver coin. I'm entitled to access to my wealth. Where's the wealth? So now those who serve in government, they get wealthy. The administrative, bureaucratic state, the politics, everybody get wealthy off off our sovereign wealth fund. The American people already have a sovereign wealth fund, and it was created and generated with the adoption of the U.S., the American Constitution for the United States of America. We already have a sovereign wealth fund. Where's the gold and silver that was confiscated under Executive Order 61, Executive Order 6102 of 1933, signed by Roosevelt? So the third act was it was more, but the third act was the Gold Reserve Act of 1934. This act further solidified the government's control over gold by prohibiting the private ownership of gold and nullifying the gold clause, the gold clauses in contracts. So you heard what I said. It said it nullified, and then it prohibited the private ownership. Violation of your Fifth Amendment protected rights. You got a right to own property. You got a right to a consent or not to consent under the contract clause without interference from the government. The government, the representative government, never had the power to nullify the gold clause in the contract. That's a violation. You can't impair obligations of contract under Article 1, Section 10. So what this did was it devalued the dollar by increasing the price of gold. So it also devalued the dollar by increasing the price of gold from $20.67 to $35 per ounce. So now we look at the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944. The international agreement established the U.S. dollars as the world reserve currency, backed by gold at $35 an ounce. However, it allowed foreign governments, not U.S. citizens, to convert dollars into gold. So this is when you start to see the decline of we the people. Now, Nixon, 71, President Nixon, executive order, was an agent. What did he do? He came in and ended the convertibility of the U.S. dollar into gold for foreign governments, fully severing the dollar ties to gold and transitioning to a fiat currency system. Okay. What happened? Hyperinflation and its impact on wealth accumulation is the reality that we must observe. The shift from a gold-backed currency to a fiat money has led to significant inflationary pressures, eroding the purchasing power of the dollar and undermining wealth accumulation. Here's a breakdown of inflation percentages across key periods. 1871 to 1913, average inflation rate of 0.2% per year, a period of relative stability under the gold standard. 1913 to 1929, average inflation rates of 1.5% per year, moderate inflation following the establishment of the Federal Reserve. 1929 to 1933, deflation during the Great Depression, with prices falling by approximately 24%. And in 1933 to 2025, right, significant inflation due to fiat currency, with the dollar losing 96% of its value since 1913. The dollar has lost 96% of its value since 1913. So the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. And the U.S. has lost the dollar value by 96% Projections for 2025 suggest continued inflation pressures further eroding wealth. The negative impacts of inflation includes loss of purchasing power. We all can say, duh, the dollar values declines, making it harder for Americans to afford goods and services. Wealth erosion, right? Savings and fixed income assets lose value over time. Sustainability crisis, rising cost of living, housing, and healthcare strain household budgets. What is that? Right? And so, exacerbating economic inequalities. So so the point is for us to get, again, a greater impact on, not impact, but insight on what Ron Paul's talking about. He's talking about our national right. The gold, the silver, and commerce belongs to the citizens alone. And without your national citizenship, you have no true wealth. And so that's what our prophet, Noble Drew Ali, it has taught all Moorish Americans, right? And he the wealth, right, of all governments, the gold, the silver, the commerce belong to the citizens alone. And so we can see that Executive Order 6102 issued and signed by Roosevelt, which dealt with the confiscation of the gold and silver from the American people, was in fact a constitutional violation under the guise of a national emergency, a national security crisis, which was engineered, but it still does not give the executive branch that's overreaching. And nobody stepped in and shut it down. And here we are dealing with the consequences of it. And so when you look at the framers of the Constitution, they envisioned a stable monetary system grounded in tangible assets. As James Madison said, quote, the circulation of confidence is better than the circulation of money, end quote. Today we must realign our monetary policies with constitutional principles to restore economic sovereignty and ensure the prosperity of future generations. Listen, this rise, this American rise, as we wake up from, dreaming. And you're talking about the American dream, they put us to sleep with these spells. Honestly, they did. They put us to sleep. We've been asleep at the wheel, and we didn't let people who have pretended to be Americans, and they done sold us out to the bankers. Roosevelt sold us out to the bankers. That's what it said. Under the guise of a national emergency that they rigged. CIA operation, FBI operation, congressional operation. It was a psyop. We have been under control by foreign powers, as early as 1871. You know what I'm saying? And really, I'm kind of lying. If you go back into 1787, you look at the relations between the Moroccan Empire. I'm Moorish American. I'm a descendant of Moroccans born in America, right? I inherit this, nationality. My nationality determines the individual's political status, especially with reference to allegiance, while domicile determines the individual's civil status. I'm a descendant of Moroccans and born in America, Moorish American. I'm at the heart and soul of the nation. So, and I'm honored for that. I'm honored to be here with you today. Gratitude, all praise is due to the Most High. And I hope you enjoyed yourself in today's Adapt Chamber with Brother Ill on the Brother Ill Global on the WIC Network. Live streaming right here on YouTube and Twitter. Or sorry, Twitter, I apologize. X, forget Twitter. Twitter's a violator. But my point is, overall, in order for the full recoupment of the people's authority and full enforcement of the people's will, then the people must be abreasted, right, and made aware of the following findings: historical, political, religious, lawful, divine, content that's, in reference to them and their authority. And what do you mean by we're going to return the people's authority. You're in charge. Why do you have to say that? Right? Because they actually stripped you of your birthrights, and hit you with civil rights. You're like, what are you talking about? There's no need for the application of 14th or 15th Amendment for the salvation of my people and citizens. Why? Because there's a due process and equal protection of the law that everybody is already guaranteed by God. Freedom, liberty. We hold these truths self-evident. All men are created free. And we have relations with nations, which require lawfully for all peoples operating here at North America to identify their nationality. Who are you with? Who is your mother? Who is your national origin? I'm American, Moroccan descendant, of Moorish descent. Oh, we got a treaty agreement. Yeah, we got a treaty agreement with the Moroccan Empire. They're our good friend. They're our brothers. We family. One nation. Under God for liberty. And so we said, wait a minute, there's a big propaganda operation here at North America. They got us calling ourselves colors. Then they create legislation under the color of law to regulate that condition. And it forfeits the people's authority, and then it's subverted to the trustee. There's a trustee assigned to the people. So now the Congress is acting in their trusteeship capacity due to the bankruptcy, which generated that executive order. They bankrupt the Constitution. When they came after the gold, they confiscated the gold from the American people, and the American people have ownership over that gold. That's their land. Where they dig the gold up at. Somebody own that. They have a right to own property, have a right to contract. And it's a direct violation of Article 1, Section 10. Gold and silver is the only legal tender for the payments of debt. Who changed that? Who changed the Constitution? The Constitution wasn't changed. So how was it a law generated that violates the Constitution, which violates the rights of the people, the inherited rights of the people? It's a breach of trust. Roosevelt committed a crime with this executive order. These acts are crimes against humanity. Where is the wealth of the American people? They did it to be able to steal long term. So all of the printing without being checked, without oversight, without audit, where does that leave the nation? 36 trillion in engineered debt to financially enslave the nation. That's opposite of American sovereignty. That's what created and financed the administrative state. And they've taken control of the executive branch, judicial branch, congressional branch, and the military. And the economy. They've taken control, administrative control. They're acting as the executors over the American people's estate without a warrant. They have no warrant of authority. The Constitution is the warrant of authority. So if our elected officials that we elected in the so-called democratic elections or constitutional elections does not have control, and the control, meaning power, the power has been subverted into agencies, agents, actors, contractors, then that causes a disfranchisement of the people. And so now we see people have personal gain for the sellout executive orders, congressional legislation, and the like. So it's a military coup. It's the occupation of the American people. We didn't even know it. So we're trying to figure out what Trump talking about. Why is he shooting 500, 600, 700 executive orders down their throat? Why is he dismantling this? Why is he dissolving that? Why did he go after Lyndon B. Johnson's executive orders? It don't stop there. That's my thing. That's the purpose of the classroom, the chamber today. Don't stop there. Keep going. Get over there to the Fed. Let's neutralize the situation. Declare the national emergency so the military can get in there. We gotta have control. That's not a request. That's an order. That's why they keep saying a mandate. The President Trump received a mandate, right, to get control. That's the order. This stuff is out of order. It has nothing to do with the original intent and purpose of the Constitution, man. It doesn't. It does not have anything to do with it. You're talking about Negro, black, and colored people and white people and all this other stuff. That ain't the story the Declaration of Independence was talking about. They say, look, man, we denouncing. They denounced their allegiance to Great Britain. So what is their nationality then? How did you come? How did they manipulate? Who manipulated? It's called the Reconstruction era. You know, when did people become white? What happened to their nationality? When did people become black? What kind of a war tool is this? Why is my millions of years of history, rulership, inventions, posterity is forbidden? There's a sanction on my history. That's a sanction. That's an international sanction when they say black man. What? Black Americans. What? Black people. What? What are you talking about? Who are you referring to? What nation is that? Where's the nation? It's not on the map. Where is it at? Why is everybody else connected to their mother nation? They have a national origin. And then when you get to you get to a particular groups, they got Roman slave names that refer to allude to slavery, black, Negro, colored, and every other non-descendable term placed on the particular groups of people. What are you talking about? Black is not a nationality. It's not a national descent. Man, what's your national descent? You got to identify that. So, the equal protection of the law. You got to identify your national descent. Just like they were saying, we're going to only recognize 2 genders. Well, when are we going to stop recognizing the fake race misclassifications when it's actually a propaganda war tool being inflicted upon a group of people to steal their money? What money? The gold and silver. Where did it come from? The land. The land, yeah. That land has a trust. And the land has been placed into a trust, referred to as a treaty and constitution. They act as trust and liens to property, to protect the property rights of the heirs, the beneficial owners. That you follow me? So so this is a scam, one big scam, and that's what Ron Paul is talking about. This is a scam. While we looking over here, looking over there, look at the feds. Where is the money? What happened to the money? Article 1, Section 10, if not restored, then the constitutional republic is not redeemed. You can't do it with fake money. You have to do it. Everything has to be real, have a tangible support. You can't just come up and just, boom, and pray. We just say prayer without works is dead. No. Where is our financial integrity? Where's the integrity? And so this is about the integrity, financial integrity, the wealth integrity. We can't continue to build an empire on human trafficking and all of the corruption that's been going on, fueling the dollar It ain't nothing of substance. It's been all unconstitutional, anti-American operations and policies and practices in place that appear to be coming to an end and causing great grief within the political class, that appears to have been involved wholeheartedly in the perpetuation of the wealth heist and birthright theft against the American people. So that's all we got. That's all the time we got for today. Thanks for joining us. Always support us at Cash App at $Wealthy Moors. That's $Wealthy Moors. Wealthy Moors 25. That's $Wealthy Moors 25. You can support the show. We'll continue to keep bringing the Moorish content with today's modern politics and economics and military events that's happening, to continue to provide intelligence for all of us to help really foster that collective awareness for us to return back to a mighty and wealthy American citizenry. So thanks for joining us here on Brother L Global. To the next time, peace.